All right, let's do the disclaimer. Next generation carriers and guests are individual union members speaking in a personal capacity, and they do not represent the views of the NALC, the United States Postal Service, or any other entity that is spoken on this program. If you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe to our monthly email newsletter. Go to nextgenerationcarriers.com/email. Fill in your name and email, click subscribe. Also, if you would like to get in contact with Next Generation Carriers podcast, send us an email at nextgenerationcarriers@gmail.com. Before I pass this over to the co-host, I want to just take a minute to acknowledge that Brian Renfroe, the president of the NELC, is here, and we are here to talk about the contract rallies, the contract surveys, and leading up to the contract. He was here back in November talking about creating a contract campaign, which the NELC is very void on mobilizing the membership. So I thank him for listening to us and engaging with the membership. Um, so I thank Brian Renfroe for doing that. It's something that's needed. We see it with the Teamsters, we see it with the nurses, we see it with UAW. You mobilize the members, you engage the members, they feel empowered. So this goes out to all the branch presidents that are listening. Um, 3 years ago, Build a Fighting NELC moved forward with open bargaining, and all these branch presidents were like, "Hey, what do you guys want open bargaining for? We bargain for the resolutions that are passed at the convention every 2 years." And we're like, "That is not open bargaining. We still have no idea what we're bargaining." It is currently February 18th, and I see still branch leaders all across the country saying, I don't know what these rallies are for. I don't know what we're fighting for. I say that's bullshit. Because 3 years ago, you said the same thing when we were saying it like, hey, we want open bargaining. And you guys are all like, trust the process, trust the process. It's all about the convention resolutions. So I'm going to say, yes, Brian Renfro is going to go into negotiating the convention resolutions. And if you do not like that, be a leader. Change our NALC constitution. Out in LA is our convention. It's in 7 months. Passed a constitutional amendment to put open bargaining into our constitution. Help bring the next generation of carriers into the limelight. Help mentor us to be in leaders. So any branch leader that is dismissing these rallies, these contract surveys, I feel that they need to be voted out, and we need a next generation of union members to take over our union. And I'll never tell anyone to jump without jumping first. So I'm branch 4716. I'm a regular rank and file city carrier. And when our elections come up next year, I will be running for vice president for my branch because we need a next generation of carriers to save our union. So I thank Brian Renfro for listening to us while other quote unquote leaders are dismissing us. And we can no longer allow these people to ride the coattails of Vince Vibrato into retirement. So I'm going to pass this over to Chris. Thank you all for joining.
Awesome. Thank you. So Brian, I'd like to thank you tonight for joining us. At your request, we've set aside a full hour for this conversation because there's a lot of important questions going on for our union right now. We're heading into a critical phase of bargaining. Members are engaged, and there are a lot of thoughtful questions out there. Our goal tonight is to give you space to lay out the strategy, provide clarity where members are looking for it, and talk about how rank and file carriers can help strengthen the union's position at the table. Um, but before we start with the questions, Greg brought up something about a member who was murdered on the. Greg, do you want to talk about that first before we
Yeah,
get to the interview part?
yeah, for those of you who don't know, we had a brother down in Atlanta, murdered last week, a couple days ago, actually. Brian and the four of us were talking before we went on air about there was a arrest made in the case after the inspection service put out a reward. Brian, do you want to just mention maybe we can just give some life to that story and how awful it was?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be with you again. I appreciate you guys inviting me back on. I guess it's been a few months now, but the timing's really good. Yeah, it's really sad, that we have to begin on such a somber note. But for those of you that are listening, if you were not aware, DeQuavius Graves was a letter carrier in Decatur, Georgia. It's kind of a suburb of Atlanta. 31 years old. Last Thursday, I believe it was February the 12th, he was found dead, shot to death in his LLV. Thursday evening, he was taken to the hospital, but unfortunately was pronounced dead very shortly thereafter. There was really not much information at that time. The inspection service, of course, responded immediately and worked with local and federal law enforcement, and they put out, as Greg mentioned, a $250,000 reward. And our understanding is that some information started to come in, and last night they arrested what they're calling a person of interest. My understanding is that the individual they arrested was also wanted for another murder. So while they're calling him a person of interest, it does seem pretty likely that this is the individual that committed this just awful crime. So I would ask everybody just keep everybody in Region 9 and certainly in Decatur, in your thoughts and in your prayers, and of course Brother Graves' family. It's just another horrific loss that once again serves as like a very jarring reminder of, while on this crime issue, when you look at the numbers, we've made some progress over the last couple of years, but just once again reemphasizes the need to continue pushing and get things like the legislation to protect our Letter Carriers Act passed. So hopefully, the killer has been caught and he will be prosecuted, and should the justice system find him guilty, he will receive an appropriate sentence, because that's been a major problem that we've had around the country. But I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to address that.
Yep.
Thank you. So just a first question here about the survey data that you did, which was great. We're happy to see it. So the members note that a national survey was conducted about priorities for this round of negotiation. When can the membership expect to see the results of that survey, and how will those results directly influence the bargaining agenda?
Yeah, I guess the best way to characterize it is a, albeit an important one, it is one of several pieces of information for our bargaining teams. And I know we talked when I was on in November, and I'm sure most of you, if not everyone that's here, is aware of this. As we did our preparations, doing the traditional things that we've done, Brother Murphy in his opening there mentioned the convention resolutions. That's a part of it. But we brought in, we've had two different rank and file committees come in. We've done polling, which is different from a survey. Polling is done by a professional and just seeks to get a certain number of responses to reach a certain level of statistical validity. And then, of course, these surveys, which are available to all of our active members, is another piece. And what we are doing is the work that our executive council subcommittee members have done on different topics. We take the results of the survey, which we have not completely compiled yet. That'll happen here pretty soon. We wanted to be sure that people had ample opportunity and time to do it. We will take that as an executive council and line that up along with the work that the council members have done. Of course, looking at convention resolutions and so on, the things that we got from those two different groups of rank and file committees, the polling data, and it helps us to, I don't know that in any of those we, get completely new suggestions or topics or things that we should bargain. It really comes down to more about the priorities and what's important to the members. As far as, when will the members know about it, as we open bargaining next week, And we've already kind of set up the structure with the Postal Service in terms of meetings on different topics and when they'll happen and the frequency and all that stuff. What we are going to do is over the course of the next few weeks as we meet, we don't walk in on day one and everybody just throws all their proposals on the table. So we sort of go topic by topic, and what we'll do is just provide consistent updates. A lot of it will likely be done in the live video format that I've done a few times that we'll make available to any member to get on, and I'll likely give updates there. And as we go through that stuff, we will talk about the results of the surveys, the results of the polling, some of the things from the rank and file as it relates to the things that we are prioritizing. This information, we have to be a little bit careful about just putting it out there for the whole world to see, because it ends up in interest arbitration potentially. So we have to, I think, kind of skillfully communicate it to the members without just simply plastering all over our website. Here's what, we may end up using it in interest arbitration in a positive way, but at the same time, we don't unnecessarily make it available to the people on the other side of the table, the Postal Service.
Okay. You mentioned live updates. You want to explain a little bit more about that? Will it be on YouTube? How are people going to find these live updates you were talking about?
Yeah, we will probably make we'll put it out on social media, the website, a link available to the members only portal for every active member. I am very anal about ensuring that anyone that gets on those updates is a member of the NALC. But it'll be available for all of our members to get on. Our plan tentatively is to do it every couple of weeks once we get into bargaining. I think that's the best format for me to, number one, ensure that the people that are there and the people that are listening are members of the union. We probably will do some stuff on the website, updates and things like that, but obviously in a conversation in a video format where the access is controlled, we can be a little more open and answer questions and things like that, as opposed to just statements and stuff like that on the website.
Okay. Margo, I think you got something next.
Yeah. So, I guess my first question, I wanted to switch gears a little bit to the rallies that are coming up this weekend. I know a lot of us are excited and that they were announced by National, but my first question is, where will you be on February 22nd?
I am planning to be with some of my favorite people in the world in Branch 176 in Baltimore, Maryland.
Excellent. And so the next question that I have is that the key to getting a good contract is sustained pressure. So the idea of continuous rolling rallies and more informational pickets going on throughout the process of negotiation has come up among rank and file carriers. The next primary dates that folks are kind of organizing around is May 1st at local May Day parades, and also the contract expiration date on May 22nd. So at this point, it wouldn't be too much work for National. The press releases, the signs, the t-shirts have already been sent out for this February 22nd rally, but is National willing to get behind a more continuous rolling strategy to fight for a fair contract?
Yes, there will be more. Some of that action will maybe mirror in some ways what we're doing on the 22nd as far as doing it across the country. There's certainly a possibility of doing action here in D.C., which we sort of take, as we talked about when I was on before, from years past. We've done that on specific topics. So there will certainly be more. To be honest with you, the reason that we didn't just kind of say, okay, here's going to be the days of action over the next several months is, number one, to maintain some level of flexibility in the event we need to focus on a particular topic. And number two, a lot of you guys that are here listening have been involved and probably even taken on the majority of the responsibility in organizing these events. So we don't really want to throw too much on people at one time. But Margo, something you said is important. It takes a long time to create, 30, 40, 50,000 t-shirts and signs and all that. We've done a ton of that. So we've got materials, we've got sort of the things in place. So when it comes to having actions in the future, whether that's wide scale or that's targeted or in a certain location, we can turn those things around fairly quickly. But there will most definitely be more.
Excellent, excellent. And the next question that I have is also, and I'm seeing some people talking about it in the chat, but the fight like hell is great, but I think that like what many of my coworkers want to hear is more specific demands. Like one of those demands that people have come up with, I think John Murphy on this pod actually came up with it, is 30 for 30, which is like $30 an hour starting pay and a ratio of one manager for every 30 carriers. Another really salient demand is a full cola instead of the diet cola, which is important. Like this time around, I'm pretty sure it was predicted that we would get like something like $650 for this cola that we just got, and it ended up being $250, and that's just for the top step. Like me as a step D carrier, like I will get far less than that. So fight like hell is great. It's a great place to start. I'm really excited to like continue to flex our muscles in the organizing in terms of organizing for a fair contract. But I think what a lot of carriers are wondering is like fight like hell for what? To save the post office, like from who? And like fight like hell for a fair contract. So then what is considered a fair contract? You know what I'm saying? Like what are the specific demands that we are bringing to the table?
Yeah. So I mean, first, the fight like hell branding, goes far beyond collective bargaining. So when we kicked this off almost exactly a year ago, um, it's just a campaign theme that we've used on Capitol Hill. We've used it in the stuff we dealt with a year ago with the White House. We've used it on the safety front and some of the things we've done through OSHA and the Department of Labor and so on. The messaging for the rallies coming up on the 22nd is pretty general, but it is geared around our top priorities, which are more pay. As we progress, the communication with the members will get more specific. I say this a lot, and I think I probably said this when we were on here before, but I think it's important. I don't think there's any debate among any member of the NALC the things that we all want to achieve. Certainly higher starting pay, higher ending pay, higher pay in the middle, getting to top step quicker, 100%, COLA at every step, everything. Like there's no disagreement there. The exercise really, and where all the input comes in, is how do we prioritize those things, which can't really be completely predetermined. You have to prepare for as many possibilities in how negotiations will play out as you possibly can. And that's what we have been doing with the council and incorporating all this stuff. So to answer the question about specifics, the goals that we have specifically are to get back to 100% COLA at every step, increase starting pay. Some people talk about $30 an hour. I think it should be more than that. That's
Yeah,
That's cool.
there's a
I'm gonna
lot of
jump in.
ways, but there's a
I'm gonna
lot of
jump in.
ways to but there's a lot of ways to do that.
Let me
You know,
jump in real
there's
quick with $30 an hour, right?
hang on, John.
Everyone's
Let me finish.
I'm saying like let me like a lot of people, a lot of members like we need to give up something, right? We need to give up something. I think this is
We don't
like
give up anything.
exactly. And this is
Right.
why 30 for 30, 30 for 30 should be a demand. We should
give up
have
management.
it should be $30 an hour starting pay, and it should be
Mhm.
one supervisor for every 30 carriers, because right now it's one for every 7. And the OIG report just came back with also tied into the CCA retention program of only 30% of the CCAs retain their jobs, 70% of CCAs quit within the first year. So that's $1 billion in waste. So I think if we go on the public, if you're holding signs saying 30 for 30 and our customers are like, wow, management's that bloated, I think our public support will start going back up because it's currently downward. So I just want to jump in with the 30 for 30 for people that don't really understand what that demand is. I came up with it because you hear it a lot. Like, what are you willing to give up? And it's like, I'm not willing to give up anything. Like, we're a labor movement. We've already settled on giving up on the right to strike. So like we should be advancing labor, and a starting pay of $30 an hour should be a thing. So 30 for 30, it would be great if Brian Renfroe adopts it and goes after management, because that OIG report is kind of crucial.
Yeah. Well, let's
yeah,
be clear. We NALC has never given up the right to strike. That has never been in place. What NALC has done is
I'm speaking. That was just speaking
illegally,
in
no,
general of
illegally,
labor. The
hang on,
labor. Yeah, I got you.
illegally went on strike to get the collective bargaining rights we have today. So the thing is, you can't take any of these pieces in isolation. And it's really interesting. Like, John, you bring that up, and from your perspective, it makes complete sense. So when we have gone through this preparation process, let's take the rank and file groups. We've had two different groups of 30, so 60 people in total. And they range from folks that have been around a long time that were branch leaders to folks that were newer letter carriers, which was intentional to try to get a variety of perspectives. And as we went through these sort of intensive deep dives on all these different topics and specifically how to prioritize the things related to money, COLAs and pay increases and how quick we get to top step and all that sort of stuff. Once all these perspectives came in, different people feel very passionately about different topics. And once you put all that together, the exercise then becomes, how do we prioritize those things? So once you get a really good sense of that and talk about scenarios with them, we then come back as an executive council, and we're going to continue to do this on Tuesday, the day before we open bargaining, and we have discussions about the different scenarios that could play out. So let me just give you an example. For someone that is at step P and has been a letter carrier for 25 years, the thing that's going to impact them most is what happens with their pay at top step. For someone that's in the middle of the pay table, let's say someone that's been around, 7, 8 years, the thing that's going to impact them the most is, of course, what happens with COLAs, or if there's a modification that gets them to top step quicker. Somebody earlier in the pay scale is going to have their perspective. And the exercise for us to do what our union has always done really well, and that is to prioritize all of these things, and whether through agreement or through interest arbitration, to reach a contract that provides economic benefit across our membership, that is spread, that benefits people, whether they're at the very beginning of their career, they're at the end of their career, or frankly, they're hired in the future going forward. And that is really what we are zeroing in on as we have put all of this information together.
But Brian, I think when we bring up the OIG report, and I'm sure there's a couple people that were in at the rap session in Cleveland in this room, and I went to the mic and we had a good back and forth on it, is like, when we bring up the OIG report, we're looking at like that talk in Cleveland was very, and I'm sure you knew it deep down, it was very doom and gloom. Like the post office is out of money. They don't have the money to pay us because they're a bad, they're not generating money, but they're not generating money because they can't follow the contract. They can't retain people. They are way too top heavy. Like if I showed up tomorrow and none of the supervisors showed up, every piece of mail is getting delivered. If none of the carriers showed up, maybe 10% is getting delivered. They'll be driving into each other in the parking lot. But I think when people see like they're out of money, but then when they see how they waste money, it's like, well, they're not out of money. Maybe if we use that money towards getting a better raise, or that money would cover 100% COLA, because I don't want to shock anybody. The difference in the COLA is not a lot of money per hour. It's the optics of it. When people see 69 or 68%, it's not a lot of money, which is for the opposite side, which is why they could just pay it. They could just do 100% COLA and stuff like that. If we can't save them from themselves, and you're a big legislative guy, it has to be done through the legislative process. Like, I'm a big fan of letter carrier political fund, but I want it to start to work for us. We're doing it with the retirees with the 100% COLA. You could just make everybody happy and go to Catherine Clark and go to those people and say, listen, you want to help us out? Help us out with this COLA thing. I don't even know if they can do that, but that's what people see. Is, to wrap it up, they see this waste. They see it every day. I see it every day as a branch president, the waste in that place. And then I look at my vice president, he's making $60,000 a year to live 20 miles from Boston. It's tough. So I think that's what the people are seeing when we bring up the OIG report, when we see the retention. It's like, we're not the problem, they're the problem. So like, I'd love to have a rally and say, lost $866 million with an arrow pointed to the post office or to the post office headquarters. I think that's what people are looking to you and looking to the union for it. Do you kind of follow me there with that?
Yeah, no, I follow what you're saying. I want to be clear about one thing. Not me nor anybody else said they don't have the money to pay us. Now,
It
what I
is
did at
doom
the
and
rap
gloom, though.
session
You
for
know,
the
it
no
is doom and gloom.
what I did at the rap session was stone cold facts.
Right.
That not necessarily related directly to collective bargaining. There are a lot of things in bargaining that we quantify, and you just mentioned several of them. So the most recent OIG report, the OIG has updated this non-career report, I think now 6 times.
Yeah.
The first time they did it on their own, the last 5 times they've done it because NALC asked them to do it, including the most recent one. They get data from the Postal Service. We spend time with them, with their researchers. We provide them information for obvious reasons. That's a study that's done that's very useful to us in quantifying what the Postal Service is wasting, frankly, on hiring employees and not being able to retain them. And there's a lot of reasons for that. They don't get paid enough. They treat them like shit. All the things that we all know and are familiar with. When it comes to things like grievances, that report that came out recently is something that in collective bargaining we'll leverage. The day before that report came out, you're talking about Capitol Hill. I went on Capitol Hill and sat down with dozens of members of the labor caucus, knowing that report was coming out the next day, knowing what it was going to say, to kind of preemptively with these members of Congress get ahead of it and say, look, we don't need you interfering in our collective bargaining, but what I need you to do is tell them they need to follow our agreement that's been bargained in good faith. And so far, while the Postal Service has kind of reacted in some ways with some national level issues that we're dealing with to that report, us using that to leverage it in a positive way to put as much pressure on them as we possibly can benefits what we're doing in bargaining, but it also, hopefully at some point results in a more serious effort on their part, at least maybe not at headquarters, but certainly out in the field where it matters for contract compliance. So, what we have really tried to do, and of course, we're just starting bargaining next week, but in the preparation process is leverage every single thing that we can. Whether that's in bargaining with them sitting across the table next week and in the weeks that follow, or that ends up in interest arbitration, to create as much information that we can utilize to make our case, to put the pressure on whoever's making that decision, whether it's the PMG or ultimately it's an arbitrator.
I have a question about the quality of service. So and this is a question from the member of our audience. So across the country, we are seeing mail intentionally left behind to avoid overtime, breaking our 6-day-a-week promise. When mail is left behind in Roseville, Michigan, because of a restriction of penalty overtime, while other cities are delivering the mail into penalty, it is literally apportioning the cost of maintaining the service to different degrees of service standards. So we are the most trusted agency in the government because we deliver through rain, sleet, or snow historically, but faith is crumbling because of a refusal to pay penalty overtime in some areas. Why has your administration remained idle, even claiming this isn't an issue, while our public image is being sacrificed for some bonuses for management? When we lose the public's trust, we lose our greatest leverage at the bargaining table. So why haven't we filed a national grievance on this? And why are we on the workroom floor been left to fend for ourselves when tackling a grievance instead of a national grievance?
All right. Well, I would first dispute the fact that we've remained idle. There's nobody that's been a stronger advocate for the Postal Service improving its service than the NALC. No question about that. There's no doubt that there is a problem with service. They have made improvements in some areas, but they continue to have stupid decisions made, primarily at the district level. And what you just mentioned, I believe it was from Michigan, is exactly what we're talking about. Everybody's got to be done by X time, or there's no more penalty overtime, or whatever the flavor of the month is. We've all dealt with that over the course of our careers. As far as why is it not a national level grievance, because it's not a violation of our collective bargaining agreement necessarily to delay mail. It doesn't make it right, but that doesn't mean it violates NALC's collective bargaining agreement. The primary way for us to address this stuff at a high level is the things that we do and continue to put pressure on, utilizing our friends in Congress that have by law oversight over the Postal Service. We have really good relationships with the chair and the ranking member of the committee in the House that oversees the Postal Service. We have a really good relationship with many of the members of the committee in the Senate, not so much the chair, Senator Rand Paul. And we continue to, push them on service. They stay on the Postal Service all the time. It's something that I have, since PMG Steiner's been in place, it's something that I just continuously, talk to him about. Because the fact of the matter is, if we don't have service long term, we don't have Postal Service. That's just the way it is. There's one piece of this service thing that ties into bargaining that's important. A big part of what we do in bargaining is we have to demonstrate our value. In other words, if we're going in front of an arbitration panel and saying, we seek to get this, a lot of that is driven by what our value is to the Postal Service. The fact of the matter is there's no Postal Service without letter carriers. That is a message that the public does understand. The public is not going to really understand a lot of the nuances, I don't think, that to us are just everyday things we deal with. But the one thing they will understand is that to them, letter carriers are the Postal Service. So our message on the 22nd is very much about pay. We are the service. As we go forward, I think some of the more targeted things that Margaret, you asked about earlier that we will do will be around that. The fact is letter carriers are the Postal Service.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. My questions are going to be about the Executive Council and negotiation team.
Mm-hmm.
There was concern amongst the members last round that the Executive Council wasn't meaningfully involved in negotiations. Can you clarify what the structure will look like this time? Will the Executive Council play a role, and who will be a part of the bargaining team when you sit down with management?
Well, the Executive Council has been extensively involved, I will tell you, to the point where most of them are probably annoyed with me, the amount of work I've had them do. So the structure is this. It's a little different on the Postal Services side. They have a vice president of labor relations now that is more directly engaged in bargaining than the vice president of labor relations the last time we bargained. So that modifies their structure a little bit. Basically, the work rule structure for us, the executive vice president handles that. I did that when I was executive vice president. He has a counterpart at the Postal Service. Depending on the topic that they are talking about, there are different other council members that may be involved in certain discussions. Ultimately, that stuff comes up to me and to the vice president of labor relations when it comes to everything except the money. The money is different. The money for the Postal Service is one person. That one person talks to me. Attorneys are sometimes in the room, depending on the nature of the conversation. That said, the final week of bargaining in May, all our council members are in a room. All the Postal Service has all their people there. We have what are called main table meetings where we officially talk about where we are on different topics. So at different phases, different council members are involved. At the point where it's a really official back and forth in terms of, we're officially giving you this proposal and you're officially giving us this proposal, every council member is in that room. So it's just an evolving thing. If, it's not a situation where we have these 6 people go over and meet with the Postal Service on this topic. That was done in years past, just being honest about it, that ends up being a waste of time, not because of our people, because the Postal Service has only got 1 or 2 people that can maybe not make a decision, but actually engage meaningfully in to make progress on a particular topic. And it's just simply a waste of time to meet with anyone else. So we try to make it as efficient as we possibly can.
Brian, you were Fred's executive vice president or vice president
For 6 years, yes.
So 2 contracts probably. were you in the room? And I think Lou was the vice president for those 6 years. Were the two of you in the room with Fred when he negotiated with, Donahue or I forget the woman after Donahue? Were you guys in the negotiation room most of the time, or was it just Fred that did the negotiations?
On the economic front, it was just Fred.
Just Fred.
So the way it went, I've done this 4 times. The first time I was staff, I
Thank
was
you, Megan Brennan. That was the name.
yeah. Well, it was Donahoe to start with when I
Right.
was first year, and then it was Megan. Um, the first time I was staff, the second time I was here, I was director of city delivery at the start and executive vice president by the time it finished, and then was executive vice president in 2019. What we would do is I did all the work rule stuff, just like Paul Barner does now. And once we progressed to a certain point and they got enough stuff done, at some point I would go in. Fred and I would sit down with his counterpart, who was Doug Tolino, who's now my counterpart, and his person, who was the manager of labor relations policies and programs. And there were points where we would go over everything. But in terms of, Fred and Doug are not sitting over there with us doing all the work rule specifics, and I don't sit in the room with Paul and do that. But there's a point where we all come together and just to kind of level set where we are. That usually happens as we start to make progress on certain topics, which sometimes happens quickly. Sometimes, it may take a lot of meetings. Just depends on the topic.
Hey, did the post office, I get the emails from, usually Rick, but did the post office file an interpretive decision on hip training was that one of the ones that came up? Are they questioning if we should get hip training? Are they filing something on that, or did I read that wrong?
Um, this is kind of a complicated story.
Oh,
Um,
We got time.
blame Capone.
yeah. So we had grievances filed. This goes back a couple years ago. The hip training has been thankfully much, much better the last 2 years after the exercise we went through. But this goes back a couple years ago where we had grievances filed about them not doing the hip training. The Postal Service brought to us at headquarters. They said, we think this is an interpretive issue because we don't think the hip training is covered by Article 19 of the agreement. So they did initiate, I guess you could call it an interpretive dispute. It is the type of question that it doesn't really benefit anyone to get the answer to. We have had a seat at the table in everything that they've done related to heat. Now, they've gone as far as they're going to go until OSHA makes them go further, which is a completely different story. This issue that they've raised is not about whether they should or shouldn't do hip training. It's solely about whether or not Article 19 incorporates it into our collective bargaining agreement, and therefore makes it grievable. So for us, if we were to push forward and take that case to national arbitration, we basically only stand to lose because we have a seat at the table right now. An adverse decision would say, no, you don't anymore. So then they're never going to, then it's clear we can't grieve it and so on and so forth. But I think we are in a place where we've worked through that issue. It's not something, the grievance has not officially been resolved, but it's not negatively impacted the hip training, which leaves a lot to be desired, but at least they've done it the last year, and it appears, as they're ramping up this year, I think they've got some things in place to be sure it gets done.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have a few national level issues, a couple they've initiated recently regarding remedies and stuff like that that are pretty complicated.
The weather's only going to get worse, and like there's new people coming in that I had a CCA have this 100 degrees out, had a bottle of water with them. So it's just like, it's like they don't really train us on that.
No, it's a very important thing. And that's why we've been involved in that I've been personally involved in it for 14 years now.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately the answer is the DOL's got to do what every other industrialized country in the world does. And that's create a heat safety standard for workers. The United States is the only industrialized country on this planet that does not have that. So that rule is was proposed, thankfully, under the Biden administration last year. Um, to her credit, Lori Chavez Dreamer, the Secretary of Labor, first thing the day she was confirmed, I went over there and talked to her. Their building's right next to ours. We had a good relationship with her when she was in Congress, and I said, "Look, I know they're going to try to get you to do all kind of crazy stuff, but the most important thing here is don't f up our OWCP. They haven't. They continue to work with us, and don't withdraw this proposed rule." And they did not withdraw it. We had a bunch of hearings on it last summer virtually that we testified in. We've had letter carriers testifying every single field hearing on this proposed rule. So we'll see what the outcome is. Hopefully, the Department of Labor finds a way to adopt the rule, which will force the Postal Service and everybody else to put the appropriate measures in place to protect people.
Hey, I think we're wrapping up towards the end. So May 22nd is when the official contract expires. Down here, I'm down here in Naples, Florida. It's pretty much perfect weather year round to be walking and outside. So me and a little group of us inside East Naples Annex got together and we're like, hey, it's kind of last minute to do anything for February 22nd. How about we do May 22nd? And they're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, we did a little petition and a photo op for Rick Scott outside of our office before work in the parking lot. How about we do an informational picket for a fair contract? And they're all on board. And this goes out to all the city carriers and branch presidents that are listening. We're going forward with May 22nd as a before we clock in informational picket to save the USPS from mismanagement. As the one thing that we haven't talked about yet, this is an election year. This is a very big midterms, and politicians are going to be looking for votes. And politicians have a lot of influence with the board of governors. We never talk about the board of governors when it comes to contract negotiations. But if we can start going after management, I'm talking directly to the city carriers that are listening to this. Hopefully, there's a lot. Hopefully, not just 10 people. If we could do nationwide real pressure, we could help Brian Renfroe secure a good contract for us. Because for all we know, the economy might go south and we might end up with like a 5-year contract because you don't want to have a contract that's only 2 years and ends in a recession and then you end up with a worse contract. So we all need to work together. We all need to work together and make sure that, like, I'm step D. I got hired in July 2021. So I still have another 30 years left. And I'm reaching out to everyone. Join me on May 22nd and we start bringing our union on board. Everyone wants to have the Teamsters, but we don't need the Teamsters. We have a union and we can no longer sit on the sidelines. People might have a difference with Brian Renfroe, but I think we need to look internally. What are we doing as a union? A union is a collective, and it's only as strong as the weakest link. So we can no longer ignore people. We need to start coming together. So on May 22nd, it's a Friday. The contract expires. We should be organizing rallies, and we should be calling the media. We should be calling politicians because AKA the post office is in the news for mail-in ballots. We have a lot of support and we could generate the momentum right now to change the course. And everyone I know feels defeated and stuff. Like, I just had route inspections. My route got destroyed. I'm out there working 12 hours a day. It's god awful walking into work, knowing my boss is going to yell at me for my estimate. And some days I'm like, yeah, whatever Doe says. And then I'll check back in later in the day. And it's like, hey, update. Whoops, didn't realize that. I just didn't want to get harassed in the morning because it's a toxic working place. And I'm reaching out to all the city carriers because the boss is Doug Tolino. It's up there at the post office. Our enemy is not inside our individual offices. So if you're still listening, join us on May 22nd to help save the USPS from mismanagement. We will be doing an informational picket line with a press release and talking points for the media. And we want more than one branch one office on board. We want to see this all in 50 states. So if you're on board, reach out to us, nextgenerationcarriers@gmail.com, or hit me up on Facebook. And with that, I kind of want to tie this in with Renfroe. Like, if the rank and file continue to mobilize without the support of national, right? Like, Build a Fighting NELC a couple of years ago did it, and then you guys piggyback that with Fight Like Hell rallies, which I congratulate, right? Like, we're flexing our muscles. Um, if the city letter carriers across the country started organizing a day of action to save USPS from mismanagement, what would the response be from national NALC?
Well, John, I want to take issue with something you said. I just don't want there to be any misunderstanding.
Okay.
It is completely, I think, inaccurate and a mischaracterization of the members of NLC to say that the members of our union are not engaged. We have the most active membership of any union in this country, bar none. It is, and we are the way our members respond to any sort of call to action. Just look at last year in 2024. We have this legitimate threat, actually imminent threat, to destroy the Postal Service. We plan to rally in 3 days in Washington, D.C., had over 1,000 people there from every state in the continental U.S. And in 3 weeks, we had nearly 300 rallies all around the country. Every single time we put out a call to action, whether it's something legislative, it's what we're doing coming up on the 22nd. It's the other things that we're going to do over the next several weeks and months as it relates to bargaining. I just don't want there to be any misunderstanding. Our union, the level of activism of our members, I'm telling you, is the envy of every other union in this country. John, to your question, would we support a day of action like that? It just depends. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the timing. Certainly, I don't think there's any danger in the Postal Service suddenly becoming experts at managing things. So I think on that particular topic, yes, but it's any action, just like all the things we've done in preparation for bargaining. It's got to be strategic. It has to be coordinated. It's got to be done in a way that works towards the goal. So it's entirely possible that on May 22nd or shortly thereafter, there is going to be activity surrounding collective bargaining that our members can engage in, that our branch leadership can engage in. We've got a lot of things, that are planned. Sitting here today, I don't think it is in our best interest on a national level, and I'm speaking as the president of NALC and the things that we're going to coordinate from headquarters, to plan something to happen on that particular day, not knowing, even though I have a pretty good idea of how I think it'll play out, how bargaining is going to play out. Now, having any sort of event like you're talking about, whether it's in the morning before work or on a Sunday to, educate the public, that's perfectly fine. I do want to caution against this, though. You see vote by mail pop up in the news now and then. We as a union have long been just staunch advocates for vote by mail. We continue to be. We founded a nonprofit in Hutchins Hall at NLC headquarters in late 2017 called the National Vote at Home Institute. I was on the board of that for years and was the chair of the board for a couple of years. And, we feel like we've made a significant impact on vote by mail. There's no secret that the one political party, including the president, has made it a significant talking point over the years. And we have to be cautious not to, through the media, attract attention that creates a scenario to put letter carriers potentially in a bad light. And with the things that we see happen on social media that are primarily driven by super PACs, both sides of the aisle, but the Republicans do it a whole lot better than the Democrats do. That's the kind of thing that they could latch onto that could end up drawing unwanted attention. So we are very careful about the way that we message things related to vote by mail. I don't think there's anything that could come from the members of NALC, certainly not to the media, that would be beneficial to us in collective bargaining related to vote by mail, given the current political environment. So
Yeah,
I
no,
would just be careful about that.
yeah, I just brought that up because it's going to be in back of people's minds, right? And
Mhm.
then also for anyone that doesn't realize, a super PAC is a political action committee. It's you have ALEC, American Legislation Exchange Council. You have the Koch brothers. You have ABC, American Building Council. ALEC, for example, could probably donate more to one politician than every single labor union can at once. That's called capitalism, and we're the labor. Um, so that just goes back to the fact that we need to unite as a union. Um, so I guess this is my final question. A lot of people think I'm crazy for asking this, and my wife told me not to ask this.
Oh, Jesus.
But
Right.
It must be a
I'm
good
just
one.
collecting. I'm just collecting dust down here. In branch 4716. I'm not a steward. I'm literally nothing. I deliver mail 7 days or 5 days a week.
Mhm.
How about you put me on like detail with you for the next 3 months, and I can help. I can help out. Like rank and
I
file.
second this
Like you
motion.
want a rank and file committee. You got a rank and file member right here. That's probably the most pro-union person this union south of New York or Philadelphia has ever seen. And I'll be honest with people. People have that. So it's
Hold
just a
on, everybody in
suggest-
the chat. Everybody in the chat just passed out. Hold on, I'm just looking. Oh, go ahead.
That's
Continue,
it. I
continue.
mean, south of New York is me because I'm up here, like in Massachusetts.
I
Thank you,
was
John. I appreciate that. I
I just
am a
wanted to
little
say that
bit,
because my
you
wife
know.
is telling me like that's a great idea to get rid of me for 3 months. And then I
How
said,
about
hey,
it?
if
How
I'm
give
about
sure
us
it,
she's
Brian?
very, I'm sure she's very supportive. I don't
She's
think
already
it's
packing
that.
his bags as we speak. How
No, I
nice.
don't think it's that crazy of a question.
Wow.
You know,
All right, that's awesome.
we're always thinking of people, and so
Okay.
Renfroe,
I have a quick.
I will at least commit.
Murphy, 2026. I'm writing it down right now.
There we go. Basically, now.
That's
All
funny.
right.
I have a question. I did kind of want to back up what Murphy was saying, like like a little while ago. I'm gonna paint a quick picture here. So before work a
Mhm.
couple days ago, I got there early to hand out flyers for the rally that we're having here in Des Moines, and a lot of the people at my station, like when they see me, like in the parking lot, like handing out flyers, I they won't necessarily tell me, but I can tell that they're thinking like, oh boy, here comes Margot with her union stuff again. You know, here she comes
You
with
get that
another ask.
too?
Yeah, we've all been that person.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to walk by her to get in, and I just want to clock in, and and a lot of what they think is like doesn't she realize they think it's great that I do it, right? They're happy for me. And at the same time, the attitude, they're like, well, doesn't she realize that like no matter what we do, we're gonna get the same old historic after like contract after hundreds of days, 1 point something percent raise, again, the same one that I've gotten for 20 years. So I did just want to say that I think Murphy has a point there. And like I guess the question that I wanted to ask is what do I say to this person to get them to come out and rally? Like how do I make them feel like it's worth their time to be more active within the union? Because we've got people that are active everywhere. I'm one of them, Murphy's one of them, like all of us here are one of them. And I love that for us. And at the same time, like I feel like I would just love to see all of my coworkers out on an
Mhm.
informational picket line, So how do I get
Yeah,
them to come out?
I think it's just simply explaining, to people that the power, of a union and the power of solidarity, really, especially the idea of empowered solidarity, is that it just takes a little bit from a whole lot of people. So you may think that, hey, spending this, I mean, look, rallies don't last that long, right? So, you think someone may say, well, all right, I'm going to leave home at such and such time. Maybe I'm gone 2 hours and I'm back home. Like that might seem like a big deal, but what if 100 thousand plus people did that. And like, I think say to them, just do it. This is an important thing. Just come out. All you have to do is be there. There's strength in numbers. It's just a demonstration. I think it just explaining to them the idea of really what solidarity and empowered solidarity is.
Okay, really quick. Another
Mm-hmm.
thing, this kind of goes back to having the rolling rallies and the continuous contract campaign, but I think that one thing that different locals are doing that's really exciting is like a button campaign. So like I think there might be a rule you can't wear the buttons necessarily out on the street, but like before work, you put in your button like to show solidarity. That like these little things that build solidarity on the workroom floor. Would National be willing to support that effort?
This is crazy you asked that. So this was going to be the last thing I said. I've not announced this anywhere, or I don't even think I've said it to, like a group that I was speaking to at a convention or a branch meeting or something like that. We are in the process of creating and are going to mail a button with a letter explaining why you're getting a button to every active member of the NALC. That the button is it's letter carriers work harder, deserve higher pay. It's a little bit of a throwback to something that was done in the late '90s, around 2000, that ended up in us getting upgraded at that time. I won't go into that whole history. Uses it's kind of the black and red branding. So I thought about when you said that about handing out the flyers. People will get them all in the mail, so they won't have to be worried by being badgered by Margot to give them buttons as they walk in the door. It takes a while to create 200,000 buttons, so they are being I think I gave the okay on that about I don't know, 3 weeks ago. So,
Okay.
like ideally, I thought about should we have that for the beginning of bargaining, but this is just the beginning, and under any scenario, this is going to take several weeks or a few months, at least even until contract expiration. So those things will be arriving, this spring. But we'll put something out once they're starting to be shipped to let people know they're on their way.
I have one last question, one really quick
Mm-hmm.
question, then I think I'm going to pass it to Chris, and then I think we'll be wrapping up here soon. But I just wanted to see if you would be willing to address like a rumor that's going around. Basically, the rumor has it that the post office is planning to offer a 1.1% raise, that the bargaining team will accept that, and that they will add another step to the top. And that the goal is to get things pushed through extremely fast, like before the election, and that everyone who's currently running for president will split the vote, and then they all end up, in the executive team, in similar positions to where they are right now. So, you care to address the rumor there?
Every single bit of that, as far as I know, is false, and I'm pretty sure I would know about all that stuff. So that there's been no conversation with the Postal Service about specifics like that, and none of that is true. I will say this: you didn't specifically say this, but people ask me about the timing. I do think, and I've openly said this to the Postal Service, I think we will reach the point of knowing whether it's a possibility for us to reach a negotiated agreement on the economics, what drives getting an agreement. I think we'll know whether or not that's a possibility much sooner than we did in the last round of negotiations. That's not, next week, that's not in March, but we're absolutely are going to give it our best effort, and I feel sure they'll do the same thing in good faith. But I do think we will get to the point of knowing whether that's a possibility or not
Brian, I know you got a
sometime
9:30
fairly soon.
and you got to get going soon. Just real quick, I have to ask this. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Obviously, I don't know. I know two people have announced that they're running for president. I'm not going to ask you if you're running for president or if you're not, but
Mm-hmm.
do you think it affects the negotiations? Like, let's say like tomorrow you got offered your dream job, and I don't know if you're the president of the NALC is your dream job. Maybe you want to be like I don't know, something else, center fielder for the Braves. Um, do you think it hurts negotiations, like if you're running or you're not running? Do you think it would benefit the members if you announce sooner than later? If you're gonna seek another term, do you see what my point? Like maybe like the post office is like, well, he's leaving anyways. What? Maybe he's not. Maybe we don't have to offer the best deal. We'll just kind of muddy the waters until drag it out until the election maybe, and we'll deal with the next person. Do you think there's a benefit to announcing if you're running sooner than later in terms of negotiations?
I don't think it has any impact whatsoever. In fact, I'm sure it doesn't have any impact whatsoever.
Okay.
It doesn't change, it doesn't change them at all. Look, I'm not here to talk about campaign stuff. I don't even think about that, to be honest with you. I've got enough stuff to do, but um, I don't have any intention of going anywhere.
Okay.
All right. My last question too. When this round of bargaining is finished and the members are looking back on it, what do you want them to say about your leadership and how this contract was handled?
I just hope that it would be that we achieve the best result that we could possibly achieve. However, that process, whichever direction it had to go, and whatever that result may be.
Josh, Josh Towney. Yep, go ahead.
You pretty much summed up a lot of the questions that I was getting from the people of Rhode Island. All I want to say is make sure we get out there, we show out our next gen carriers. We need to get out there and show out and make sure your voice is in the mix in 2026.
Thank you for that,
Cool.
Josh.
Absolutely.
Get in the mix in 2026. Good job, Townie. I'm going to trademark that. I'm going to steal that from you. All right, we'll wrap up here, but one last thing. Hopefully everyone knows Waldo. They've seen the book, so the book's I Spy. So next month's postal record, the next generation carriers will be in the next postal record. Anyone that's not in the executive council that sees it first, share it on social media and we'll give you a free episode. No limits as we do it. So anyone that sees us in the if you spy us in the postal record, uh post it on social media. The first person to do so and tags us gets a free episode. So again, thank you, Brian Renfroe. Thank you for everyone listening. If you enjoyed this or didn't enjoy this, please share with your coworkers. Um, Educate, agitate, organize, and we need to be reaching out to our CCAs and PTFs that are new to our union. This is probably the first union. This is also probably the first contract negotiations. The strongest union is based on the weakest link. So make sure they're not weak. So here's the outro. Thank you so much for tuning into the Next Generation Carriers podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to share it to a coworker. Please think about making a donation to our podcast to help sustain this project. Donate what you can. Go to nextgenerationcarriers.com/donate. Until next time, solidarity. Thank you all.
All
How do we
right.
stop this?
And then we stop recording.
Thanks, Brian.
All right.
Also,